Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Becomes a Pokemon Trainer. In this story, it is simply what you might expect. The story of My Hero Academia, but in world filled with not only quirks, but also Pokemon. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Let the madness begin. Mick roared out. Instantly, almost all of the ships began sailing towards Midoriya's. One after another, Pokemon were summoned out. On Todoroki's ship, they could see Drizzle beside Todoroki, Kaminari and Sparky by the front, and Yaoyorozu sent out a Wartortle. Iida tossed out his Pokeball to reveal his Skarmory, the chief class officer ordering his Pokemon to fly towards Midoriya's ship and steal the flag. On Bakugo's ship, the Pokemon released were Kirishima's Quilladin, the Ghastly beside Mina, Sero had a Galvantula with him on a side of the ship, and the explosive blonde himself smugly tossed his Pokeball, the beam striking the water, and out erupted his shiny Gyarados. Off near the back, Shinsu's ship seemed to lazily move across the water, with almost no desire to sail towards Midoriya. Serena wordlessly tossed out her Melodic as it swam beside the ship, with Shinsu on the helm, his Malamar beside him, and both trainer and Pokemon had a devious grin on their faces. Sorry to have to gang up on you, Midoriya, but this is just a battle for that 10 million. Tetsu called out. And we will be taking it. Sorry again for the Izzy, but if I have to stand out more, I'm gonna be needing that headband. Toru yelled out too, Sato steering the ship with Koda on one side and Jiro on the other, with the former sending out his Pidove after Midoriya's ship. Here they come. Uraraka warned, her face looking rather squeamish and green. As predicted, they're not giving us much time act. Tokoyami said. If we need to act, now is the time. Right? Izuku nodded. Mei, are the engines ready? Throttles and lift are good to go. Mei called out, her hands on the wheel and an installed console beside her. Alright. Izuku nodded before whirling his head out towards the incoming ships. Then forward. Upon Izuku's yell, Mei pressed a button on the console, and their ship began to sail towards the oncoming ships. What's this? Mick's exclaim of surprise captured the looks of surprise on the students. Even with everyone coming after him, Midoriya's ship sailing right towards them. What the hell is he thinking? Itsuka muttered, confused, her crew members of Satsuna, Ryako, and Kanoko equally as confounded. Does he think that he can somehow pass right through all of us? Todoroki questioned, before scoffing. He's going to learn that's a big mistake. Todoroki raised his right arm, cold air frosting over it. Wait Todoroki, something is not right. Momo stopped her team leader. You mean other than Midoriya suddenly going crazy? Kaminari asked. No, Yaoyorozu is right. Iida replied from the helm. Midoriya wouldn't do this without a plan of sorts. And doesn't it seem like Midoriya is getting closer awfully quick? Shoto Todoroki looked back towards Midoriya's ship, and realized that it was indeed gliding across the waters awfully quick. Shoto's eyes widened, recalling the pink-haired girl from the support course on Midoriya's team. Don't tell me that. Deku's got the support extra to tech out that ship with engines or something. Bakugo growled, his hands raised with popping explosions. You think that you are hot shit now, Deku? I'll destroy you. Bakugo rocketed out of his ship and began flying towards Midoriya's ship, catching up to the other flying Pokemon going towards Izuku's ship. And Bakugo has blasted off out of his ship and is flying towards Midoriya and his team. Mick announced. Is it even legal? As long as he isn't touching the water, then he's free to do so. Midnight announced. In that case, Satsuna grinned and began to separate into pieces. Those pieces, led by Satsuna's head and torso, floated up and sped out towards Midoriya. Then here I come Greenie. Deku. Uraraka called out, worried. Any day now. Wait for it. Izuku said, one of his hands rising behind him. Izuku waited as the airborne Pokemon and students were getting closer. Midoriya. Tokoyami joined Uraraka in warning their leader. Wait for it. Izuku said again, as they grew closer. Any day now, boss. Pikachu called from his Pokeball. After a few moments, his eyes widened and yelled out now. Mei. Izuku brought the hand behind his back out, and revealed a Pokeball in hand that he tossed into the air. About time. Mei yelled out, raising and tossing her own Pokeball into the air. Show them what you can do, Magni. A Pokeball opened up and in a flash of white light, revealed a Magneton. Magneton. The Magnet Pokemon called out, as it floated in the air, its body made up of 3 Magnemites, its pre-evolution, the 3 gray, one-eyed orbs stuck together in a triangular formation, with 3 black magnets on each gray orb, the tips red and blue, as well as 3 screws each. And from the Pokeball Deku tossed up was a Pikachu. Pikachu squeaked out. Shit. It's his Pikachu. Jiro yelled out in panic. That was practically a warning alarm for the rest of the Wanna class, and even 1B Bakugo's eyes widened and immediately thrusted his hands forwards, blasting back and further away from now appeared electric Pokemon. Satsuna even backed away, knowing full well that an electric type well in the air was not a good idea. This sentiment was followed up quickly by all the other airborne Pokemon. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. Hardest starboard. He yelled out to Ida. Ida complied and quickly turned the wheel right, Todoroki's ship quickly changing directions to the left, till their port side faced Midoriya's ship. The rest of the ships began to slow down and angle away from Midoriya. Look at that. They're turning away from Midoriya, Mick announced. All thanks to 2 Pokemon. Not just any 2 Pokemon. Aizawa jumped in. 2 electric-type Pokemon in the middle of a body of water is already a right cause to be cautious. However, it's Midoriya Pikachu that is the true threat. Huh? Mick questioned, raising a confused eyebrow. While I have only seen videos, Midoriya's Pikachu is among one of, if not the most powerful of all its kind. Aizawa explained to his co-host and the audience of the sports festival. That Pokemon's voltage and power potential rivals, and surpasses all the Pokemons in UA, that includes the 3rd years. From reports, its Thunderbolt was powerful enough to strongly harm even the strongest of the Pokemon belonging the villains of the USJ attack. Seriously? Mirio's eyes widened, amazed at the prospect of such a powerful Pokemon. Even stronger than Nejire's? Amajiki asked, looking to the student in question. Nejire's own eyes widened in surprise, before quickly morphing into delight and curious fervor, her desire to know more and more about Izuku Midoriya growing by the second. Nezu and Taishi looked at the Pikachu on screen with narrowed eyes. Recognition flashing in their eyes, Nezu and Taishi smiled wickedly. I see. Nezu chuckled and took a sip of tea. Very clever, Midoriya. Back on the lake, Todoroki's ship was in Midoriya's path, its port side facing out towards them. I'm in charge of the frontal assault, Iida's at the helm, and Yaoyorozu on the starboard side, leaving Kaminari on our port side. Todoroki thought, turning to the bracing blonde-haired teen and his own Pikachu. If we get our ship to port side, then Kaminari can easily absorb any electricity from Midoriya's Pikachu, and that Magneton. Powerful or not, it won't do anything against our very own lightning rod. Deku. Bakugo growled out, now chasing after Midoriya's from behind. You think that you can scare me off easily with that weakling Pikachu? I'll crush you. Seeing enemies in front and behind, Izuku merely smiled. Nay, time to lift off. Izuku declared, confusing the overhearing other teams. Captain 10 million. Mei saluted and pressed on a rather large red button on the console beside her. Immediately, bubbling occurred right below Midoriya's ship, drawing everyone's attention. The bubbling grew more and more until they realized that Midoriya's ship was rising higher and higher, till it left the water entirely. The teams and the viewing audience could look on in pure shock when they saw Midoriya's ship rise high above Todoroki's ship and sail into the air itself. Unbelievable. Mick roared out. Midoriya and his ship have just gone airborne. Midoriya. Ida called out, absolutely befuddled. Whoa, go Midori. Mina cheered. Her gloomy demeanor replaced with gleeful amazement. Bakugo, now hanging from his ship's bowsprit, had his shell shock replaced with jealous rage. Shut it, weird eyes. Bakugo roared out to his crew member. Shitty hair. After them. Kirishima quickly wore off his shock and spun the wheel of the ship to change course to after Midoriya's airborne ship. Meanwhile, Mina's glee fell into an annoyed glare towards her team leader. How did Kiri convince me to side with this shirk? She thought to herself. So, that green-haired narcissist has gone airborne far enough to keep us from reaching him and boarding his ship. Monoma looked out to the flying ship on his ship's bow, Kasade Tsuburaba and Shihai Kasade by his ship's sides, and Senator Kabara on the helm. And he seems to be getting all the attention from the rest of the teams. Monoma grinned. Good. Shinsu watched the Wanna show off, as he thought of Midoriya, before looking towards the other ships now sailing after Izuku. Shinsu grinned darkly. Behind him, his crew stared off wide-eyed and unblinking into front of them. Melodic looked up with concern as Serena stared, eyes glazed and unresponsive. Back on Izuku's ship, Izuku turned back to his crew. Status. Izuku ordered, a shit-eating grin on his face. Turbines and engines all fully operational. May declared out, a holographic display over the console. On the display, and now fully visible to the eyes of the world, 8 engines were attached to the sides of the ship, 4 along the top and bottom of the port side, and another 4 along the starboard side. 4 of them seemed to be shooting out regular fiery fumes of engines, but the other 4 were releasing highly pressurized air, and looked more fixed downwards, while the former engines were shifting and moving upon their directions. Our air jets are keeping us perfectly aloft, while my turbine babies are eased for easy and manageable aerodynamic turns and direction. May announced, Magneton floating close by. Good. Izuku nodded. And the flag. May pointed, looking up the top of the mast where the white flag with the point stuck out, hard and still, up on the mast. Sticking strong and steady. Alright. Izuku nodded again, satisfied as he turned his gaze downwards, before towards Uraraka. Achako. How are you doing? Uraraka gulped and wiped her forehead. Alright. Uraraka muttered, her face still looking queasy, joined by her side by Pikachu. It's a little above my normal weight limit, but I can negate the gravity of much of the ship and the engines to make us lighter. I will likely only be able to zero 1 or 2 people's gravity before I need to cancel. Alright, just don't push yourself too hard. Izuku warned his teammate, to her blush and smile. Tokoyami, how you and Dark Shadow holding up? Content. Tokoyami replied, a cord of darkness and shadow connecting the raven-headed teen with Dark Shadow as he circled the boat. The extra altitude has not hampered our strength. As long as I keep Dark Shadow far enough from the thrusters, there should be no complications. Alright. Izuku nodded, digging at something in his pocket. I think it's time to send out your Pokemon. Agreed. Tokoyami nodded, pulling out his own Pokeball, a Dusk Ball, to be precise. Spread your dark wings, Honchkrow. From the Dusk Ball, out popped out a large and white avian Pokemon, dark blue plumage, making up most of its body and wings, the inside feathers a blood red color, its dark blue feathered tail ending with a puff of red plumage stalk. Its wide, stuck-out chest was covered mostly with a white crest of feathers, similar to a beard or cravat, its broad, short neck supporting its dark blue head, feathers in the shape of white crescent circling its blood-red eyes, its yellow beak curved slightly downwards, and the top part of its head styled similarly to a large fedora, with a curved spike at the back. Its appearance was topped off with black 4-toothed talons with razor-sharp white claws. Honchkrow. The dark blue Pokemon's caught out. Izuku brought out his Pokédex and scanned the 2 new Pokemon in his presence. Honchkrow, the big boss Pokemon, and the evolved form of Murkrow. The Pokédex began. One cry from this Pokemon, and a murder of Murkrow come flying. At such times, one would think the curtain of night had fallen, plunging the world into jet-black darkness. The Pokédex shifted towards Hatsume's Magneton. Magneton, the Magnet Pokemon, and the evolved form of Magnemite. Magneton emits a powerful magnetic force that is fatal to electronics and precision instruments. Because of this, it is said that some towns warn people to keep this Pokemon inside a Pokeball. We shouldn't be worried about that. Uraraka spoke up about Magneton's dex entry. Don't worry, brown-haired girl. May spoke up. I spent enough time with my Magni to figure out how to ignore that magnetic force. My babies are perfectly Magneton-proof. Mostly. That's good enough. Izuku nodded. Nice job, May. It's Uraraka. Uraraka muttered, still a little annoyed that the pink-haired inventor was still clueless of her name, despite saying it to her multiple times during their team meeting. 8 minutes have already passed. Izuku continued, staring down at the water and ships down below. We won't have to keep in the air forever, just enough time to wait out and steer away from the other ships. Izuku looked down and his eyes widened. Hard to port. May quickly complied, the ship enough to evade a hydro pump aimed at their engines. Looking down, he saw the flying Pokemon advance towards him with a few Pokemon from down below, attacking with long-ranged attacks. Marshtomp, Water Pulse. Hananuki called out from his ship, his Marshtomp, swimming in the water, jumped out and formed the attack, and launched it at them at high speeds. Dark Shadow. Tokoyami yelled out. The Sentient Quirk reacted immediately, stretching out and blocking the watery orb from striking the ship or the engines. Haha. You can't run away forever, Midoriya. Mineta yelled out, his teammates including Asui and Shoji. Go get them, Swoobit. Air Cutter. The general led student Swoobit fired waves of razor-like wind towards them, followed by Asui's palpitate fired echoed voice, and Shoji's Octillery fired another hydro pump. Defend. Izuku ordered. Magni, protect. May ordered. The magnet Pokemon flew down and formed a shield of energy that blocked the air cutters. Dark Shadow took the brunt of the echoed voice. Pikachu then jumped up and fired a thunderbolt that contested the Octazooka, struggling against the water-type attack until it exploded into a puff of steam. Todoroki's eyes narrowed, feeling that something was not right with that attack, but before he could elaborate more, he heard Iida call out to his Skarmory. "Skarmory, evade and capture the flag," Iida ordered. Skarmory flew upwards, dodging a strike from Honchkrow and Dark Shadow's claw to attempt to reach the flag. "Magni, Thunderbolt," May ordered. The magnet Pokemon sparked in yellow electricity, its magnet arms circling and flashing before firing a bolt of electricity. Pikachu likewise jumped up and fired another Thunderbolt, too. "Defend with Steel Wing," Iida ordered in reply. Skarmory's wings glowed white before gaining a silvery shine. It dodged and evaded the bolts of electricity, crossed its wings together and blocking the bolts by crossing and spreading its wings out in defense. But before it could proceed again towards the flag, it was struck away and being chased after by Honchkrow. "Their defenses are too strong," Momo frowned. "With Pikachu and Magneton, they can drive away aerial Pokemon and negate our long-range attacks. And if they don't, then it's Dark Shadow and Honchkrow that defend the flag and ship." "Not for long." Kagakure giggled mischievous, while Team Midoriya's Pokemon and Dark Shadow still batted away the incoming Pokemon. "Kota, time to use your voice, dude." Kota shyly nodded. He stepped further to the edge of the ship and cleared his throat. Fighting against the shyness of having the attention of the world on him, Kota screamed out, "All Pokemon in the air. Please listen to my voice and stop pursuing Midoriya. Pidove, Jigglypuff, continue after the flag." Instantly, all the Pokemon that were previously after Midoriya froze up and began slowly descending away from Midoriya's ship. "Curses," Iida growled. "I forgot about Kota's ability to talk and control Pokemon." Shinsu looked towards the Anavis user with an unreadable expression on his face, though the corner of his eyes could be seen twitching. "Alright, Jigglypuff, put them to bed," Jiro called out. "Sing." Jiro's Jigglypuff floated up to where many of the Pokemon were and began to sing. "Jigglypuff." The harmonious music spread out all over the area, and quickly put to sleep many of the Pokemon to sleep, descending and splashing onto the water, incapacitated. "Ah! Swoobit!" Mineta cried out as his Swoobit fell into the water. That pink puffball put them all to sleep. "Nice one, Jiro, Jigglypuff." Sato continued. "Kota, use your quirk on Midoriya's Pokemon. It may not affect Honchkrow, but the others may be able to give your Pidove the flag." Kota nodded, meekly. He looked up towards the Magneton and Pikachu and yelled out, "Pikachu! Magneton! Please listen to me and give Pidove the flag for us." Pidove and Jigglypuff, the former evading the latter's sleep-inducing attack, flew up towards the flag, evading Dark Shadow's claws and Honchkrow's pursuits, and getting closer to the flag. "Thunderbolt!" The two Pokemon heard just before bolts of yellow electricity blasted into them, crying out in pain. "What?" Kagakure's team all exclaimed, shocked and confused. "Sorry, Kota." The team looked up to see Midoriya by the edge of the ship, smiling victoriously at them. "But we made sure to come prepared with everything we need to avoid your quirk." Izuku pointed to his ear, the students noticing an earbud on his ear, before noticing the same, multiple ones on both Magneton and Pikachu. "Introducing Hatsume's all-purpose earbuds," May announced, pulling out an extra earbud and pointing to the one on her own ear. "Not only is it a neat way to communicate, but it also comes with a noise cancellation option. With just the right adjustment, these nifty babies can block and cancel out any kind of noises. From sound-based moves to even Pokemon controlling voices, these babies can block them out and still receive orders." "Damn it." Jiro cursed. "Support course tech. Magni, buzz these buzzards away with Electro Ball," May ordered, pressing on her earbud to relay the command. Both Magneton and Pikachu formed an Electro Ball and launched it at the paralyzed flying types, making them cry out at more super effective damage, and get blasted out of the ship and falling towards the water, resurfacing to see them fainted. "Woo! Would you look at that, ladies and germs," Mick announced with roaring excitement. "Midoriya and Hatsume have once again trumped their fellow competitors with that awesome support tech. What do you have to say about that, Arasi?" "Don't call me that," Aizawa growled out, sending out a warning glare from underneath his mostly bandaged face. But it was a smart strategy. Midoriya analyzed and predicted the many variables against him, and came up with strategies that would nullify his competitors, and Hatsume's tech is versatile and accommodating to Midoriya's strategies. A truly dangerous combination. All Might smiled as he watched his successor continue to do so well, the roaring cheers of the crowd, helping to raise his pride at how his protege is already making a name for himself. Mirio smiled widely, nodding at Eraserhead's words of approval. Mirio felt almost as invested into this Izuku Midoriya as Nejire and Sir Night-Eye. Mirio pondered and thought that Sir would like this Midoriya, finding that the two in common with their thoughts on strategy and analysis. He wondered if Sir would be willing to send him an internship or work-study offer. Ah, man. Higakure whined, her mime junior mimicking her movements. Sato looked back up to their mast and gasped. Higakure. Our flag. Sato pointed up to see that their flag was suddenly gone. What? Higakure cried out in shock. How? Sailing away from them was Monoma's ship with Monoma smiling smugly as Higakure's flag floated up to him. The holder of the flag became visible to see it was Kaworu's Duskull. Well, that was easy. He taunted. Yorozu, is it ready? Todoroki asked his teammate. Affirmative. Momo said, her shirt open to reveal the faint leftover glows from her stomach as she created her latest creation, a disc launcher of sorts. And I've calibrated them to Kaminari's signature. Good. Todoroki nodded. Fire at will. Momo readied the launch, aiming towards Midoriya's ship, and fired with a loud bang. The loud bang was enough to alert Tokoyami and direct Dark Shadow to block the incoming projectile. Dark Shadow blocked it with his arm, though noticed that something latched onto it. It looked to see that it was some kind of beeping disc. Now, Kaminari. Momo yelled. Awesome. Kaminari smirked, electricity sparking off of him, raising a finger towards Dark Shadow with a tracker over one of his eyes. Normally, I can't shoot my electricity out without it going everywhere. But this disc and tracker of yours solves that issue. Sparky, Thunderbolt. As his Pikachu let out a blast of electricity, Kaminari likewise fired a bolt of electricity of his own. The two bolts of electricity soared and struck the sentient quirk, it and Tokoyami crying out in pain. Tokoyami. Izuku yelled. Magni, protect them. Mei ordered, the Magnet Pokemon complying and going in between the bolts blocking them with a shield of energy. How is Kaminari able to do that? Izuku questioned, working through his mental information on how Kaminari overcome his weakness. Deku, look. Uraraka pointed at the tracer on the whimpering Dark Shadow's claw. It must have been that disc Momo shot him with. It looked like Kaminari's electricity was tracking onto it. Izuku quickly hopped onto the sentient quirk, powering up full cowling and smashing the disc into pieces. Momo. Izuku muttered, hopping off back onto the ship. As smart as ever. Deku. Izuku heard and looked to see Bakugo flying towards him. Die. Izuku froze at the hateful glare coming from the explosive teen, the adrenaline of the moment flashing Deku back to his past, picturing himself back as his skinny, useless self, and Bakugo with his Aldera school uniform. Luckily, before he was attacked, Dark Shadow stood between them, tanking the explosion. Honchkrow, sucker punch. Tokoyami ordered. Bakugo barely could back away before a sinisterly powered wing smacked him across the face and sent him flying back. Bakugo quickly recovered in time to evade another attack from Honchkrow, proceeding to fly back while avoiding the pursuing Pokemon. And Tokoyami, his Dark Shadow, and Honchkrow once again saved the day with a well-timed defensive attack. Mick announced. Deku, are you okay? Uraraka went over and checked on her team leader. Why yeah, I am fine. Izuku shook free of his terrified stupor, cursing internally at his slip-up. That was too close. Tokoyami, how are you in Dark Shadow? Alright, but the bright attacks have done a number of Dark Shadow. Tokoyami responded. If there was any more sunlight, Kaminari's and Bakugo's attack would have destroyed Dark Shadow. True to Tokoyami's words, Dark Shadow's glowing yellow eyes were scrunched in a whimpering, sad frown, a comical teardrop on its yellow eyes as it whimpered. Izuku frowned. Just like you said, Tokoyami. Flashback. So, while Hatsume's engines will keep us afloat in the air, we will have Pikachu and Magneton attack as defense and long-range attackers if need be. Izuku talked his plan to his team. The four of them were standing by their ship, still docked by the edge of the lake. Mei's Porygon would warp away and back a time, as it brought more of Hitsumi's tech from her lab, while the pink-haired inventor worked with Uraraka helping her by floating the heavier objects. That left Izuku to converse with Tokoyami about the rest of the plan. But with your Dark Shadow, we can gain an omnidirectional advantage to add to our defenses, which will help better with your Pokemon. Izuku continued. We won't have to fight, just evade and defend our ship and flag, long enough for the event to end, and for Plan B to work out while they are focused on us and the ship. Interesting. An excellent strategy based on defense and misdirection. But more impressively, Tokoyami nodded, cupping his avian beak in thought. You seem to have figured out that perfect role for Dark Shadow, without even knowing much about it or me. Dark Shadow's weakness is all about light and darkness. In greater darkness, the beast has greater attack and size, but it's difficult to control. However, when exposed to enough light, he's more manageable, but weaker. And if he suffers too much sunlight, then he could be weakened to the point of destruction. Destruction? Izuku questioned, his eyes widening in alarm. Not permanent, of course. Tokoyami pointed out, waving away Izuku's concern. Just enough to where Dark Shadow would need to rest inside of me and in shade. But back to my point, if we use Pikachu's and Magneton's electricity, along with the glow of those thrusters, Dark Shadow can be managed more easily. I'm impressed at your analysis and deduction, Midoriya. Izuku scratched his cheek, embarrassed. Thanks. He thanked the avian-headed teen. However, there's a problem that we will likely have to face. Tokoyami continued. As I said, light-based attacks will harm Dark Shadow, and it just so happens that we have many enemies and their Pokémons that have access to attacks that can produce such light. Kaminari and Bakugo. Izuku correctly deduced. As well as Todoroki's fire from his left side, and whatever other Pokémon our classmates possess. Tokoyami nodded. While Hatsume's Magneton can defend against those with Protect, Dark Shadow will mostly likely face against these challenges, and be weakened enough that he will be unavailable. That does sound possible. Izuku cupped his chin in thought. If only we had some way to cover Dark Shadow and darkness to replenish its strength and make it stronger if need be. Tokoyami grinned and brought out a dusk ball from his belt. Fortunately, I have a solution. Tokoyami revealed. Flashback over. Tokoyami, everyone, proceed to stage 2. Izuku ordered. Right. His 3 teammates nodded. Uraraka dug into her pocket to pull out a Pokeball, while Mei pressed a few buttons on her console, and the thrusters began to lessen and reduce their speed, just barely inching through the sky, and floating up by their air jets. Honchkrow, return back. Tokoyami called out. Honchkrow heard and ceased his pursuit of Bakugo and flew back to the ship. Bakugo noticed and changed course to blast off back to the ship. As Honchkrow returned, Mei tossed them all high-tech looking shades with green lenses. Everybody ready? Izuku called out, putting on his shades. Aye. The 3 replied. Alright. Stage 2, go. Izuku ordered out. Tokoyami. Tokoyami nodded. Honchkrow, power up with nasty plot and envelop the ship with haze. Honchkrow. Honchkrow's glowed with sinister dark energy, and then began flapping his wings around the ship, a black mist enveloping around the ship to the point where it was completely covered in the dark fog. What's this? Mick questioned. Tokoyami's Honchkrow has just enveloped the entire area with a dark fog. Both Mick and the crowd were left confused on what was going on. Just what are Midoriya and his team doing? That's weird. Nejire placed a finger over her chin, tilting her head as well. If they do that, they will be obscuring their vision on where they are going. They could be trying to hide in that black fog. Mirio rationalized it. They're going slower now, so maybe they think that the fog will make it harder for the other teams to fire on them. But they will likewise be unaware of where the attacks will be coming from. Amajiki countered. They would know when to evade until it would be too late. Just what is that boy planning? Taishi thought, his eyes glowing blue as he used clear sight to look through the fog. Seeing the growing form inside, Taishi's eyes widened in surprise, before his mouth morphed into a grin. Deku. Bakugo yelled, blasting off towards the fog. You think you can hide in that fog? Acting once more like the cowardly weakling that you are. It won't against me. I'll blast through and take that flop. Bakugo was cut off by the massive claw that burst through the fog and swiped at him. Bakugo couldn't evade in time from the massive shadowy claw, as it collided and sent him sailing back towards the water. Back on his boast, Sero acted quickly, swinging up to the mast of his ship with his tape and hanging on the ratlines. He fired a line of tape at Bakugo's direction, the tape latching onto his back. With a heavy swing rightwards, Sero wrested Bakugo's momentum before he hit the water, and swung him in an arc back to the ship. Bakugo recovered his senses as he landed onto Mina's outstretched arms. Looks you caught our catch of the day, Sero. Mina joked. Bakugo growled and squirmed and flailed his way out of Mina's arms and marched away. Mina frowned at his ungrateful attitude and lack of thanks. You're welcome. Kirishima chuckled nervously at the two's interaction. Mitsuki and Masaru Bakugo, meanwhile, sighed entirely and embarrassed at Bakugo's behavior as it was televised. Inko could only pat her friend on the back. Bakugo looked back up to see what the hell had happened, his, and all the other teams, eyes widening at the sight. Stretching out of the black fog that surrounded the flying ship was Dark Shadow's shadowy claw. However, this time, it was far larger than it was before, easily 10 times as large and wide. Another massive claw and arm came out of the other side of the ship. Finally, peering out the top of the fog was the massive head of Dark Shadow, its eyes gone from yellow to orange. It raised its head out and roared out a loud, screeching caw. Holy Arceus! Mick cursed, his glasses going crooked at his exclamation, revealing his white eyes. Aizawa's own eyes looked wide in surprise. Tokoyami's Dark Shadow just got an upgrade and evolved into a massive beast. The crowd roared out in cheers of excitement and amazement, while the competing students all looked on in wide, shocked eyes. Was this all part of Midoriya's plan? That's so cool. Nejire yelled out loudly, her eyes twinkling with stars. That shadowy bird quirk thing just grew 10 times larger. Maybe 8 times. What happened? How did it change so much? Was it the fog? Was the fog increasing its strength? Was it the fog itself, or was it the darkness of the fog? Nejire, slow down. Mirio chuckled nervously as he tried to calm the hyperactive girl from her rapid-fire questions. I'm sure you can ask him and Midoriya when the event or the festival is over. Whoa. Now that's a neat trick. Murako whistled, she and Ryukyu continuing to watch from their balcony. Looks like that kid with the Murkrow fur head's quirk just got supercharged. Indeed. Ryukyu nodded, impressed. It's just as big as my dragoon form. I imagine that it must have been the reason why they enveloped the ship in all that fog. It must mean the boy's quirk must be powered by how dark it is. Great, now I'm itching to fight both it and that green-haired cinnamon roll even more now. Murako commented, her rapidly tapping foot evidence of her excitement. Cinnamon roll? Ryukyu questioned Murako's description of Midoriya. Yeah, I mean, come on. Look at the kid. Murako gestured a hand towards a screen showing the images of Midoriya and his team. I mean, he looks more sharper and good-looking when he's serious, but don't tell me that he doesn't look like a cute cinnamon roll. Ryukyu looked to the image of Izuku Midoriya and tried to see what Murako was saying. After a moment, she shrugged and nodded in reluctance. I guess. Ryukyu said. Suddenly, she perked up and turned to her friend with a teasing, sharp-toothed grin. So, good-looking, huh? Hey, it's not weird to admit when someone's good-looking. Murako fired back, her tan dark cheeks brightening. Hell, a million guys say I'm hot, and I'm denying or mad about that. Then, why are your cheeks blushing? Ryukyu continued teasing her best friend. Murako's cheeks only grew brighter at their mention. Shut up. Murako roared out to Ryukyu's laughter. Stop laughing at me. Inside the dark fog of haze, Midoriya, Uraraka, and Tokoyami pressed a button on the side of their shades, the green lenses lighting up, and the three could see clearly through the darkness around them. How's my babies working? Mei called out from the helm, pressing the side of her regular goggles, the yellow lenses lighting up as well. They're working perfectly, Hatsume. Izuku called back. You babies are incredible. We couldn't have made it this far without you. Mei's smile was so wide and bright, it threatened to break her face, her cheeks bright and red. Thanks. Mei yelled back. Future husband. She kept that last part to herself. Uraraka meanwhile, grumbled jealously. I'm helping lift us up too. Uraraka grumbled, wiping away at her sweat from her brow. Alright, with this kind of attention and cover, time to initiate Plan B. Izuku said, smirking. Over at Bakugo's ship, the explosive teen was left fuming, staring up at that fog-covered ship with burning hatred. That's it. Bakugo roared out, his palms letting out mini explosions. I'm going back in and getting that flag. Shouldn't we just focus on the other team's flags? Zero asked. Yeah, we wasted enough time trying to get Midori's flag. Mina said. Wouldn't it be easier to get the others and secure our place? Bakugo whirled his gaze towards Mina with accusatory rage. Oh, you would like that, wouldn't you? For us to stop going after your boyfriend, huh? Bakugo accused. Mina's pink cheeks flared purple. He's not my boyfriend. Mina roared back, getting up in Bakugo's face. While the two argued and bickered, Sero watching with a comical sweat drop over his head, Kirishima noticed something falling from the fog around Midoriya's ship. It was far enough away and small enough that Kirishima couldn't make out what it was, but it got his attention. Guys, Kirishima tried to speak up. Listen here, Weird Eyes. I don't care what that weakling Deku did to get you to suck his dick, but we are not going to stop until we steal that flag and show that weakling Caterpie his place. Bakugo yelled right in her face. Shitty hair. Continue towards Deku's ship and have your Quilladin and Sero's Galvantula fire at it. Bakugo stomped off before the fuming Mina could retort. Mina's fingers dug into her palm so hard, she thought that she was going to draw blood. Mina whirled her gaze over to Kirishima with a glare. She didn't say anything, but Kirishima knew that glare meant I'm stuck here helping this bastard, and it's your fault. Mina stomped off to her side of the ship. Kirishima felt a mixture of guilt and confusion. Ever since the USJ, he and Bakugo felt that they were becoming good friends, the best of friends in Kirishima's mind. After what Kirishima saw of Bakugo fighting villains, so confidently and skilled, he saw the ash-blonde teen as incredibly manly and cool. And Sarah was also a regular face that he and Bakugo ended up hanging out a lot with. He wanted this event to help Mina, his oldest friend, see what he saw in him, but it seemed that they couldn't get along on a fundamental level. And it centered around one person. Izuku Midoriya. Kirishima didn't know how Izuku managed to make Mina so infatuated with him so fast, but it's not like he couldn't see why anyone would find his class rep attractive. Midabro, as Kirishima has begun to call him, was super manly as well. He was strong, fast, super smart and strategical. He even managed to beat Bakugo in the battle exercise, and broke that hand villain's hand. But there seems to be some kind of bad blood between Midoriya and Bakugo. The two often glared at each other, Bakugo mostly at Midoriya. They knew each other before UA, much like he and Mina, but unlike them, the two had a more hateful rivalry, and Bakugo always seemed to call Midoriya by Deku. Kirishima didn't know what that name meant, or why Bakugo said it with such vitriol. Could Midoriya have wronged Bakugo? Kirishima thought to himself. He couldn't imagine Midoriya as some kind of bully. Sure, Midoriya seems a bit antagonistic towards Bakugo, but the latter seemed to antagonize the former more, and he didn't miss those glares that Serena would always send out towards Bakugo, especially during the Pokemon battle assessment. And Serena was good friends with Midoriya that also knew each other before UAC. Could it be Bakugo may have been the one who wronged Midoriya? Shitty hair. Bakugo's yell snapped him out of his musings. Quickly remembering what he is supposed to do, Kirishima spun the wheel and directed the ship towards Midoriya's, all the while forgetting the falling object that he wanted to point out. 10 minutes remaining. Midnight's voice announced to the teams. Todoroki growled in anger. Enough of this. Todoroki said, before turning to his crew. We are going fully on the offense. Kaminari, you and Pikachu fire more bolts of electricity at the ship, try to aim for their engines. You need to get us closer and have Skarmory distract that Honchkrow from creating more of that fog. Yoyorozu, keep firing those discs for Kaminari, and create a cannon to fire at their engines. His team nodded and went to work, with Yoyorozu being the only one who felt lightly hesitant. She looked back and forth between Todoroki and the ship, most likely thinking about Midoriya, but a final knowing look made the Yoyorozu heiress flinch and get back to her orders. Todoroki himself just scoffed, cursing his old man for putting them into this situation. With 10 minutes remaining on the clock, let's take a look at the standings, shall we? Mick pressed a button, turning a view of the screen in the stadium to a new image, full of the teams and their points. Let's see. Obviously, Team Midoriya still is in the lead with their 10 million points and... The crowd's looks of confusion and surprise were similar to present Mick's. Well, this is unexpected turn. According to this, other than Team Midoriya, Class 1 isn't looking so hot. True to present Mick's words, on the scoreboard, where Midoriya's team was in an obvious first place, Todoroki's team was suddenly dropped down to 5th place. Even worse, all of the other Class 1 teams from Mineta to Higakure's had 0 points. And the team that were currently in 2nd and 3rd were Monoma's and Tetsutetsu's. Even Bakugo is losing. Mick announced, focusing on Team Bakugo having 0 points. Hearing what present Mick said, Bakugo looked up to his ship's mast and see that his flag was missing. Bakugo looked around to see what ship took it to see that the closest one was Monoma's ship as it was sailing away. Monoma laughed tauntingly, a Duskull floated up to him and gave him Bakugo's flag. Your class is too small-minded. Monoma taunted. You should have thought bigger. He's got our flag. Mina exclaimed, shocked. What did you say? Bakugo roared out in outrage at the insult. Get back here. Remember, the obstacle course was only the first event of the sports festival, and it seemed logical that they wouldn't cut that many of us out in the first game. Monoma explained, a taunting grin on his face. We figured that about 40 students would be left remaining, to have all of the students of 1 and 1B, at least, so we made sure to stay within that range. Although I guess not all of the hero course did make it in. Bakugo growled at the obvious taunt. Meanwhile, over at the student bleachers, Aoyama stayed hidden in the shadows of the corridors, trying not to be seen as he shook. With our spots in the mid-ranks, we could safely observe our rivals and their abilities and skills. Monoma continued, placing the flag along the mast, alongside 2 other flags. And as an added bonus, the greater point totals of your class made you more valuable targets for this round, which was quite fortuitous. In the end, only a fool would focus obsessively on winning the preliminary rounds, right? So, you planned this as a class? Bakugo questioned, wondering why other members of Class 1B scored higher spots like the metal copycat of Kirishima, that vine-haired girl, skull face, or that splitting into pieces girl whose hair reminded him of Deku's. Well, it wasn't completely unanimous. Monoma admitted, his eyes twitching at his more rebellious classmates that refused to go along with his strategy, including his class president, Kendo, and Tetsu. But I say that it's playing out well. Monoma's team score was now up to 1,460 points. I mean, it's better than chasing after a temporary frontrunner like a Mudsdale with a carrot waving over his face. Bakugo's eyes and fingers began twitching that his classmates thought he was a robot that blew a gasket. Hey, Monoma, they're coming. Sen called out, pointing towards 3 advancing ships. You took our flag. Mineta called out accusingly. I know you did. Get them. Monoma nodded but decided to leave one final jab at the angry blonde. Oh, I just remembered something. You're quite famous, aren't you? Monoma tauntingly asked. For being attacked by that sludge villain, right? And, if I can recall, a green-haired boy helped pull you out before All Might rescued you. Now, tell me, was that Midoriya that saved you? When Bakugo tensed up, Monoma knew that he was right. Kirishima and Mina looked at Bakugo with surprise, clearly unaware that Midoriya was the very same kid that helped pull him out. The 2 looked at their team leader with greater confusion in their eyes. Man, it must suck always having to be placed in the role of the victim. Monoma laughed mockingly, as their ship began to steer away. And to be so prideful that you purposefully go after your very savior. How ungrateful. Bakugo's growl was almost inhumane. Kirishima. We have a change of plans. His teammates and Monoma looked over at Teen, the former of whom paled and shivered at how Bakugo looked. The comical red aura surrounded Bakugo, his eyes pure red and enraged, and his palms exploding like crazy. Before we get Deku, we're gonna kill every last one of these B-list idiots. Monoma simply smirked. Over at the bleachers, Taishi's blue eyes glanced at Bakugo, seeing the ever-rising malicious red aura around the boy, causing his concerned frown. Something of worry there, old friend. Nezu asked, though Taishi knew the rodent principal was serious in his question. Perhaps. Taishi muttered. Well, the boy doesn't seem to have any affinity as a chosen. The raging aura around him could be a concern if it is not handled properly. I see. Nezu sighed. It seems I have to have Hound Dog push further on his anger management therapy sessions. I feel sorry for him. Taishi quipped to Nezu's laughter. Over with the parents, Mitsuki was a similar mood to her son. Hey you stupid brat. Mitsuki raged at the monitors, not caring that her son could not hear her. Stop embarrassing yourself in US and calm the fuck down before I come and smack your head like a thwacky. She still hasn't decided to take my advice, huh? Inko whispered to Masaru. No, she hasn't. Masaru shook his head. Despite your frequent requests, she has not looked at herself in the mirror. The 2 nearly burst into chuckles. What are you 2 chuckling about? Mitsuki turned her furious gaze on them. It better not be laughing at me. Unfortunately, that actually caused both of them to start laughing and struggle with controlling that laughter, and calm down the mother before they draw any more attention. Back on the lake, Todoroki's ship was seen firing on the fog-covered ship of Midoriya's. Yorirozu kept firing from her cannons and her disc launcher. Kaminari would proceed with firing more of his bolts of electricity that tracked those discs, and his Sparky firing in tandem. However, their efforts would be thwarted by the enlarged Dark Shadow, Pikachu, and Magneton swiping, blasting, and blocking the attacks, and defending the ship within the fog. Iida's Skarmory would attempt be seen trying to get within the fog, while clashing with Tokoyami's Honchkrow in an even stalemate. Todoroki's contributions came in drizzle firing water pulses that were likewise blasted or blocked. Todoroki. Momo called out as she fired another disc. This isn't working. Please, we could use your fire. Agreed. Iida called out, still steering the ship. Your fire could help light through the fog to see and drive Dark Shadow back. No? Todoroki yelled firmly again, glaring at his team. I will never use it. Never. His teammates could see the burning hatred in his eyes when referring to it, most probably his left side. Back at the stands, Endeavor watched and understood the situation. He frowned, greatly displeased. Mei, what do you see from the other teams? Izuku asked. Looks like they are more preoccupied with each other. Mei revealed, her eyes zooming to see many of the ships struggling against each other. It looks like Todoroki's ship may be the only one trying to get us. Oh wait. What is it? Uraraka perked up and asked. Either my babies need fixing or there are multiple body parts flying towards us. Mei questioned. What? Izuku said, speeding up to the helm with Mei and looking out to barely see that there were indeed several body parts flying towards their ship, and he knew well who that was. Satsuna. Looks like you seem a little preoccupied with Todoroki, Greenie. Satsuna's head snarked as she and the rest of her body parts, including her hands, began flying towards them, her team's ship sailing behind her. You wouldn't mind handing over that flag and spare you that burden. Shit, this is bad. Izuku thought. Dark Shadow, Pikachu, and Magneton are focused on defending against Todoroki's attacks, and Honchkrow is busy fighting Skarmory. A thought bubble appeared over Deku's head that had a cartoonish representation of the situation. If we divert our attention from them, we could risk one of Todoroki's attacks hitting the engines while preoccupied with Satsuna. His imaging had the cartoonish Dark Shadow and Pokemon trying to drive away Satsuna's pieces, and resulting in a hit from Todoroki's ship. And even if we did focus on her, Satsuna's pieces could go everywhere and dodge our attacks easily. And as she gets onto the ship, it would only be a matter of time before she figures out where the flag is and steals it. We have to divert her pieces close by and blast away with a widespread attack, but how? Izuku's eyes whitened as the answer came to him. Quickly, Izuku turned to his crew. Tokoyami, you, Dark Shadow, and Honchkrow, keep defending the ship from Todoroki's team. Izuku ordered. But have Honchkrow prepare for a flyby. On it. Tokoyami nodded, focusing his efforts on the task at hand. Uraraka, keep Pikachu's attention of defense as well. Well, when I give the signal, you make me weightless and toss me forwards. Izuku continued. As long as you can. I have no time to explain. You got it. Uraraka said, running up to the helm. Mei, when I give the signal, you have Magneton fire a discharge behind us. Izuku said. It's risky, but try to have it focused on a wide net around the ship. 10 million. Mei saluted. Izuku backed up till he reached the ledge of the helm, and looking out to the back of the helm and the fog. Izuku burned the path in his mind and closed his eyes, breathing deeply as he turned off his lenses. Alright, focus. Izuku told to himself, full cowling flaring to life around him, the green bioelectricity sparking around him, and slightly lighting his surroundings. Remember how it felt. That energy. Izuku dug deep into himself. That well of energy. That storm, large and vast. Remember how to grab it, hold it, and pull from it. Feeling his metaphorical hand reaching into that swarming storm of green and blue energy, he dug his hand into the storm, feeling the burning blue flames from within, surging through his body, ignoring how his mind ached and felt on fire. Izuku's eyes opened, his emerald eyes glazing and glowing sea blue. Taishi and Ejire felt a spike of aura, their eyes glowing blue on reflex. Is he, they both thought. Izuku dug his heel back before shooting off. Now. Izuku ordered. Magni, discharge. Mei ordered loudly. Magneton flew out of the fog and out into the open world, taking Satsuna by surprise. Magni's entire body came alive in blue electricity and fired of discharge everywhere, covering almost his whole surroundings like a cage of web of electricity. Satsuna's pieces felt the buzz of the electricity quickly pulled them back, closer to her as she tried dodging the wild energy. Uraraka. Izuku called out as he began to run forwards, barely seeing where he was going, but knew when to jump. He felt Uraraka's hand on his back, feeling his weight about to leave him as he began to leap. With a final shove, Izuku flew out of the fog and into the bright sky, almost flinching from discomfort, but quickly got it together, and he luckily flew in between the discharge, and sailed towards the surprised Satsuna. Izuku quickly thrusted his left hand out, his right hand bracing onto left arm. Izuku dug deep into that energy his aura, he realized, and let it flow. His hand glowing in blue light. Just like the lake. Izuku recalled his trip to Lake Verity with Shuashi, and his attack to gain its attention. Embrace that power, let it flow, and condense. Lightning sparked around him, the blue light coalescing into a flickering blue orb. Todoroki, Momo, Iida, and Kaminari stared in shock. Taishi and Nezu's eyes and mouth widening, surprised. Not all the way, like last then. Izuku thought of the SJ and his aura sphere against Shigaraki, and his later broken hand. But just enough. The blue orb of energy began to flicker and shake less and become denser. Satsuna and Izuku's teammates were taken back and frozen. The blue light and energy pierced through the fog and made Dark Shadow flinch and whimper. Nejire's mouth went agape, the aura she felt rushing through her making her head spin and her heart race. And when you feel like you can't anymore, let it free and burst. Izuku declared. Thanks for helping me figure this out, Koch-chan. All Might and Inko's eyes widened in amazement and shock. Miles away, watching from their screens, the raven black-haired man, his Lucario and Riolu, and Cynthia perk up and stare with agape mouths. Aura Force. Burst. Izuku roared. The incomplete aura sphere shot out of his hand and towards Setsuna for only a foot, before it exploded into a burst of aura like an explosion. The explosion of aura sent all of Setsuna and her close by pieces flying back, while Izuku blasted downwards. Whoa. What was that? Present Mick exclaimed in surprise. Midoriya just shot out and fired some kind of blue ball that exploded. Eraser, what heck was that? I don't know. Eraser muttered, himself shocked and dumbfounded by what his class's problem child just accomplished. Setsuna flinched as her head and pieces spun over the area. The hell was that? Setsuna thought, as she tried to reorient herself. I thought he could only use that aura of his to boost his physical body, not shoot out like that. Setsuna managed to piece herself back together on her ship, tumbling to the floorboards. Setsuna. Her team leader, Itsuka, went over to her. Are you okay? Why yeah, Jay, just a bit dizzy. No big. Setsuna tried to wave off the concern, but noticed that her body felt a little numb. And not like you just got hit point blank with an explosion numb, but almost like her body was buzzing and numb with energy, making her feel dizzy and disoriented. Could it be some side effect of whatever Izuku did? Suddenly, their ship lurched to a sudden halt that made them all stumble to their feet. What the Itsuka muttered. Did we hit something? They all shook off the recoil and noticed that their ship had just crashed onto an iceberg. And upon further inspection, they found that all of their ship was covered in ice. Even Setsuna's Totodile in the water was half covered in ice. How did Itsuka try to figure out before finding the answer when looking at where the trail of ice went from? Todoroki's ship, and towards the slightly frosted Todoroki. Apologies, but you are getting in our way. Todoroki apologized. And we will take that while we are at it. Huh? They all said. They all looked to where Todoroki was pointing at, and see Ida Skarmory making off with the flag, their flag. Wayu Itsuka grumbled in anger, waving her arms at him. Get back here. Meanwhile, Izuku was sailing down towards the water, cradling his hand. He yelled out Tokoyami. A whistle came from the ship as Izuku continued his descent toward the waves. But before he could crash, he was swooped from the sky and began flying through the air. Izuku shook off the shift to see that Honchkrow had managed to grab him and fly him upwards. Thanks Honchkrow. Crow? Honchkrow caught in response. Phew, looks like that Honchkrow managed to save him in time. Mirio wiped his forehead. I mean, he couldn't have died from that height, but the impact and that speed would likely hurt. Yes, a speed caused by that powerful explosion he created. Amajiki nodded. Oh yeah, that was weird. Mirio scratched his head. I thought his quirk made his aura boost his physical body, but it looked like he unleashed that aura almost like a projectile. Could he be like you, Nejire? Nejire. Mirio's questions would not be answered by Nejire as she stared at the screen silently. Her eyes were as white as dinner plates, her mouth agape slightly, and looked flushed and breathless, given her panting and red face. She is like me and Master Riley. Nejire thought with affirmation of what she just saw. That was an aura sphere. The energy, the glow, the shape, there couldn't be anything else like it. Nejire left her hand over her chest as she felt her heart drumming wildly. And the feeling. I haven't felt anything like this before. See, could he truly be? There's no mistaking it, my friend. Nezu said, putting down his teen cup before he dropped it from his shaky hands. That was indeed an aura sphere that Mr. Midoriya just did. Incredible, wasn't it? Yes. It truly was. Taishi nodded, readjusting his glasses and fiddling with his pendant. Well, it was an incomplete variation. He understood his limitations and used what he could to make such an attack. Ingenious, especially from a novice with little training. You haven't given him any training beforehand? Nezu questioned. No, none whatsoever. Taishi shook his head. He must have discovered this on his own after the Yusuke. Truly, a protege in the making. I'm sure his predecessor is feeling quite confused and proud as we speak. Nezu said aloud. True to Nezu's words, All Might was left completely stunned by what Midoriya had just done. What was that? All Might thought, trying to wrap his mind about what his successor just did. See, could this be young Midoriya tapping into his aura? It could feel the energy from here and felt and looked different than One for All, and I sure as hell never have done that, even in my prime. All Might smiled. Whatever it was, I know that this was all you, young Midoriya. All Might continued thinking with pride. Not me, not Gran Torino, not Taishi. All you. My baby. Inko was currently crying up waterfalls of joy once again, dousing the Bakugos from their stunned state. Alexa was up with the reporters and cameramen, taking photos of the screens and the cheering fans, and most certainly was able to get multiple rapid-fire pictures of whatever the hell that Midoriya kid pulled off. Reviewing her pictures was when Alexa was fully able to realize what had just happened. Oh boy, Sin is sure to want this. Alexa muttered to herself. Cynthia stared at the scene played before her, her hand cupping her chin in thought. There was no mistaking what that was. Cynthia muttered, a grin on her face. How very, very interesting. The raven-haired man watched as well, the scene replaying in his mind over and over, his ocean blue eyes making no mistake at the time of what the boy just did. He finally was able to realize Riolu nudging him and pointing at the screen, saying his name over and over. Yes, I did see, Riolu. Riley nodded, turning back to the screen to see Izuku Midoriya being flown by Honchkrow. Izuku Midoriya. Could you be what my old master has been looking for? Shigaraki growled at the sight like before. He thought, recalling the aura sphere that broke his hand, made by the same brat. The memory brought back phantom pains and the urge to pick and scratch at his bandaged hand and his neck. From the other end of the monitor watching over Shigaraki, the shadowy figure on the chair, made no noise other than a chuckle or two, along with a raspy breath. Beside him was the cloaked figure, his features hidden by the cloak, with only the green light of the monitors illuminating the dark skin of his mouth and jawline, his blood-red eyes that burned purplish red hatred. Honchkrow set Izuku down onto the ship safely before flying back out Deku. Izuku was met with a Uraraka on him, her hands quickly latching onto his left hand, gently. That was amazing. Was that attack like what you did in the USJ? What about your hands? Is it broken like before? Deku didn't know why, but seeing Uraraka so worried about him, so much so that she ended up firing rapid amounts of questions like when he mumbles, made a part of Izuku's flutter. Deku? Uraraka asked again when she was met with stunned silence. Izuku snapped out of it, his face feeling hot and red. I'm fine, Achako, really. Izuku finally replied. Look, see? He showed her his non-broken hand, flexing it. It feels a little numb, and my head's still buzzing, but I'm fine. Okay, good. Uraraka nodded, sighing content. Mei pouted in a frown, displeased by how Gravity Girl, as Mei remembered as, was so close and concerned about her future husband. That was a risky move, Midoriya. Tokoyami commented. However, knowing you, I'm sure it was necessary. Before Izuku could reply, Mei screamed out, hard to starboard. Brace yourselves. They barely registered her words as the ship suddenly swerved to the right, the sounds of ice cracking and metal scratching coming into their ears as they stumbled for support. What was that? Izuku yelled out, quickly putting on his lenses back and activating them. His vision cleared to see that of their port side a huge glacier of ice was suddenly there. Judging by where it was, Mei's sudden turn to the left kept them from ramming straight into it. Engine and air jet 1 are damaged. Mei reported, her HUD showing the corresponding engines flashing red. From the port side of the ship, the engine and air jet was badly scratched and damaged from the ice, former leaking out smoke, and latter sputtering out less air. Team Midoriya felt the effects as the ship wobbled and tilted slightly in the direction. Todoroki. Izuku muttered, realizing the culprit of the iceberg. Outside, at Todoroki's ship, Todoroki hung on from a rope Yoirozu made, his foot skimming along the water, the evidence and trail of frost and ice showing from where Todoroki launched the iceberg from. Breathing out a breath of cold air, Todoroki yelled Yoirozu, Kaminari, now. As ordered, Yoirozu fired from both their cannon and disc launcher, while Sparky fired another thunderbolt. The cannonball and thunderbolt were blocked from Tokoyami, but the disc launcher found its mark on the back right engine. Kaminari proceeded to fire another electrical bolt that traced and found through at the disc, this time causing the engine to explode. Midoriya and his team struggled at the rumble and shake of the ship. Now engine 4 is destroyed. Mei yelled, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. We can't maintain altitude for long. It was Yoirozu and Kaminari. Tokoyami revealed. Despite Midoriya's attack driving away Takage, the light weakened Dark Shadow, enough to give Todoroki's team an opening. Deku, what should we do? Uraraka asked. Izuku gritted his teeth, frowning at his mistake. I should have made Tokoyami order Honchkrow to make more Hazer attacks at Suna instead of me. Izuku berated himself. He shook his head. Now's not the time. We can't stay in the air at this point. We bought all the time we can. Now, we just have to hope plan B works. Uraka, release the weight on the engines. Mei, shut down the air jets and steady the ship for landing. Tokoyami, keep up the defenses and try to smoothen our landing. Izuku ordered. We are going down. Aye. The three hollered. Tokoyami in Dark Shadow returned his attention to the starboard side. Mei typed in her commands on the console and steadied the ship as their altitude began to steadily drop. Uraka pressed her fingertips together. Release. She yelled out. Suddenly, the ship lurched and leaned at the sudden weight. Mei pressed some final commands and held the wheel tightly. From outside, Midoriya's ship began to peek out from the fog, descending towards the water at a slightly forward angle. Todoroki narrowed his cold eyes towards his prize. And with some well-placed attacks from Team Todoroki, Midoriya's ship is falling from the sky. Mick announced, the crowd cheering more and more. As the clock is ticking down to almost 7 minutes, it seems this is rapidly shaping up to be anyone's game. Bakugo did his best to ignore Mick's announcements, just as he did when he saw whatever attack Deku did before on that 1B extra. The rage and damaged pride that Bakugo felt when recognized that attack as a blatant copy of his quirk almost made Bakugo command his team to turn around. However, first he had to get his flag back and beat that smug 1B extra ringleader to paste. Gyarados, blast that extra ship apart with hydro pump. Bakugo ordered. Water gathered and formed around Gyarados' open maw. Monoma smirked. Ditto, transform. Monoma ordered. A purple blob jumped out of the ship and landed in the water, glowing as it submerged. Wait. Sero cried out to Bakugo. If you destroy their ship, all their points will be lost. Including ours. Fire. Bakugo yelled out, ignoring Sero. Gyarados did as his trainer commanded, a stream of highly pressurized water firing at Monoma's ship. A surge of water erupted out in between the ship and Bakugo's the hydro pump, crashing into the sudden object. What? Bakugo exclaimed. The mist from the attack subsided and what was revealed was another Gyarados. They have a shiny Gyarados, too. Hiroshima exclaimed, confused. No, you idiot. Bakugo replied, glaring murderously at the new Pokemon. Look at its eyes. Bakugo's team looked where their leader told them, blinking in surprise. Rather than the large raging eyes of Gyarados, its eye sockets held instead two beady dots for eyes, and even its maw was thinner and more stretched, like a pulled smile. What the Mina flinched back, disgusted. Quickly, pulling out her Pokédex, she scanned the weird Gyarados, the dex pulling up an image of a light purple blob-like creature, its body lumpy and fluid. Ditto, the transformed Pokemon. The Pokédex said. It has the ability to reconstitute its entire cellular structure to transform into whatever it sees. How do you like my Ditto? Monoma's voice taunted them. So very nice of you to let it transform into your team's strongest Pokemon. Ditto, can you kindly return fire with your own hydro pump? Ditto Gyarados' roar of compliance was more a distorted laugh as it formed a hydro pump of his own to fire. Bakugo's Gyarados was quick to block the attack blasting onto his face. Monoma, maybe cool it on the provoking. Sen suggested. Oh, you're right, Kabar. That isn't quite heroic of me, is it? Monoma nodded to his teammate at the helm. Apologies. These things just happen. After all, heroes are always getting hunted by moronic villains desperately seeking revenge. Bakugo's forehead veins twitched more before he shot himself out of the ship, yelling out, keep that copycat busy. Bakugo yelled out. I'm going after that bastard and our flag. While the two Gyarados tussled and fought against each other, Bakugo exploded his way towards Monoma, before exploding down onto the arrogantly smirking student. Take this. Bakugo reared his hand to fire another explosion. Tsubiraba. Monoma said. The brown-haired, large-pupil-eyed teen breathed and blew out. The air began to spread and solidify till Bakugo face planted onto a floating piece of air shaped like a disc. The hell? Bakugo cursed. Present Mick. Kasate Tsubiraba. Quirk. Solid air. He can make the air he blows out his mouth harden into walls, shields, and steps. The bigger the breath, the stronger the hardened air. Looking stupid fighting air, don't you? Kasate taunted. With an enraged roar, Bakugo smashed through the air with an explosion, shocking the previously taunting teen from how quickly he broke through. Bakugo blasted forward, passing by Tsubiraba for his target. Monoma and the mast full of flags. Die. Bakugo fired another explosion at Monoma, sure to hit his target. However, Monoma's arm hardened and turned into steel, raising it and blocking Bakugo's explosion easily. Bakugo and his team's eyes widen at the sudden change, but before Bakugo could counterattack, Monoma's arm grazed Bakugo's hand, and Monoma smirked. The steel receded from Monoma's arm, and the smug blonde reared and slammed his other hand on Bakugo's stomach, the sounds of crackles and pops, the only warning of the explosion that smashed into Bakugo's stomach. Gaping at the sudden pain, Bakugo shook it off and blasted away, before the midnight black and white-haired student could pop out of the shadows and grab at him, quickly landing on his ship, now side by side with their ship from meters away. "You okay, dude?" Sero asked. "I'm fine." Bakugo yelled back, rubbing his stomach. "You got quite the powerful quirk there, I'll admit." Monoma admitted, flexing his arm while his hand crackled and popped more mini explosions. "But I think mine is better. Don't you agree?" "What was that?" Kirishima asked. "First, it looked like he had that Tetsu guy's quirk, then he's suddenly making explosions like you, man. Isn't it obvious?" Bakugo growled out, glaring at Monoma. "He can copy other quirks. Present Mick. Nieto Monoma. Quirk. COPY1 He can copy the quirks of those he touches. However, he can only hold up to 4 quirks, maximum, and use them for 5 minutes. Also, he can copy only use one at a time." "Ha, so even an idiot can figure it out." Monoma taunted for the umpteenth time. "Boys, Ditto, engage fire." Instantly, Monoma's team commanded their Pokemon to fire roof attacks, from pin missiles from Sen's Beedrill, a Psybeam from Mr. Mime, Kaworu's Duskull's Hex, and Ditto Gyarados firing another Hydro Pump. "Defend!" Kirishima yelled. Quilladin and Ghastly fired their own pin missiles and Hex, striking and cancelling Beedrills and Duskulls, while Galvantula and Gyarados fired a Thunderbolt and Hydro Pump that clashed against Psybeam and Hydro Pump. The waves rocked at the multiple explosions. All of the clashing students unaware of the shifting water from the unattended starboard side. As the back and forth of the attacks occurred, Bakugo growled and thought to himself, damn it. Monoma's taunts echoed in his head, suddenly finding himself staring at a mirror of himself with Monoma's taunting face blending with his own. He rubbed where Monoma's explosion hit him, the soreness, the heat. His mind took him back to his past, remembering the explosions that he used to fire all the time on Deku's frail body. The memory made his anger soar, burying whatever feelings of guilt and sympathy that were trying to be made known. "I wouldn't be weak and made fun of. Not like that loser Deku." Bakugo roared, inwards. "I won't let these idiots make a fool of me. I won't let Deku win anymore. I'm going to be the undisputed champion of this stupid festival. Elbow guy. Swing up with Weird Eyes up above and swing around." Bakugo ordered. "Weird Eyes, spread your acid over them like rain, well up there. Get your Pokemon to cover fire with their widest range moves and incapacitate them." The name's Sero Mina. Sero and Mina yelled, but his sharp glare meant he was serious, so they just nodded and complied. "Shitty hair, ram our ships eyed with theirs." Bakugo continued ordering. "Then jump over and destroy their wheel." Kirishima looked uncertain for a moment before nodding. "You got it. Move it, you extras." Bakugo ordered as he took flight. "Don't call us extras," his team yelled out. "Looks like he doesn't learn." Monoma shook his head, disappointed. "Everyone fire." As the Pokemon fired their attacks again, Bakugo quickly blasted upwards, their tunnel vision revealing the rapidly approaching ship about to blindside them. Quilladin, Rock Tomb. Galvantula, Electro Web. Kirishima and Sero ordered. Quilladin fired multiple glowing rocks that suddenly grew into larger rocks, blocking and cancelling Team Monoma's attacks. Before the dust settled, a large web made of electricity shot through and made their way towards them. Ditto Gyarados was the only one to duck underneath the water to evade, while the whole port side of the ship, including the Pokemon, were covered in the Electro Web, the Pokemon getting stuck on the web and electrocuted. Kaworu tried to back up, but when Bakugo's ship slammed its side with theirs, Kaworu stumbled, fell onto the web, and cried out at the electricity coursing through his body. Monoma and Kasei managed to back away in time. Kasei looked up and saw Sero swinging from the top of the ship, Mina wrapped in his other arm. Acid rain. Mina yelled as she shipped her hands forwards and tossed a large amount of acid outwards, spreading along an arc towards them. "Shit." Kasei cursed, breathing deeply and blowing in an arc, forming another, whiter shield of solid air to protect the team from the acid. "Ghastly, hypnosis," Mina ordered. Mina's Ghastly came up to the trapped Pokemon and Kaworu's and stared at them, waves of psychic energy flashing from his eyes. The waves struck their unprepared eyes and quickly put most of them to sleep. Sen tried to move his ship from theirs, only to stop at a loud yell. Sen looked and quickly backed up before Kirishima's hardened fist struck, the fist instead smashing through and breaking the wheel to pieces. Oh, crap. Sen cursed loudly at his mistake. Maybe I gotta stop yelling before I attack. Kirishima smirked, rushing towards Sen. It seems to make my opponents notice and always back away. Sen's arms began to gyrate and spin like drills before punching towards Kirishima. The Redeed crossed his arms, blocking Sen's multiple drill-like punches and kicks, smirking underneath as he knew to keep him occupied on him. Monoma struggled to figure out which of his teammates to assist, until he heard the sounds of explosions coming from behind him. He turned to see Bakugo heading towards the ship from the other side. I gotcha now. Bakugo yelled. Ditto. Monoma called out. From below the water, out came Ditto Gyarados, floating between Bakugo and the ship, raising its mud fire at him. Bakugo grinned darkly. Now, Gyarados. He called out. Hyper Beam, point blank. Bakugo's Gyarados 2 jumped out of the water, right beside Ditto Gyarados, and fired a point-blank Hyper Beam at Ditto, the explosion covering the area in smoke. Monoma coughed and squinted, trying to see where Bakugo was coming from. His ears twitched as he heard the explosions, and quickly looked up to see Bakugo flying down from the top of the mast to him. Bastard. He roared out. Monoma switched to Kasei's quirk and blew out, forming a shield to protect him from the explosion Bakugo unleashed. Monoma expected Bakugo to continue pounding away at the shield, instead Bakugo jumped off and flew away. Monoma grinned arrogantly, beginning to taunt again. Oh, was it? Monoma mocked. Was that all that you could come up with? And here I thought you were going to show why we were a waste of space and time. Bakugo responded, but not with words, but by showing his hand that didn't propel him. A hand full of flags. Monoma's eyes widened in horror and looked back to the mast, realizing that there were no more flags on his mast. Now, disengage. Bakugo ordered, as he got back to the ship. Kirishima smirked and jumped back to the ship, leaving a confused Sen, while Sero swung around again for Mina to swipe another pile of acid out, this time on where the electro web stuck their ship to Monoma's. Quickly, the acid ate away the web, and the ship broke free and began to sail away, fast thanks to Gyarados pushing the ship from behind, and Monoma's motionless. What just happened? Kasei whirled towards Monoma and asked. Monoma was frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. They got them. Monoma muttered out, defeated. They got the flags. Kasei's eyes widened and turned towards Sen. Sen, we gotta catch up to them. Kasei yelled. We can't. Sen responded. Kirishima broke the wheel. We're dead in the water. Monoma's eyes and hands twitched. Those twitching hands became clenched fists, his agape mouth turned to a feral grin, and his eyes twitched into a murderous glare. Those wanna show-offs. Monoma growled out, veins all over his head twitching wildly. And just like that, Bakugo has retaken his flag and made off with all of Team Monoma's remaining ones. Mick announced, showing Bakugo's team score up to second place, while Monoma's collapsed to 0. Racer stared, stoically, at the events that transpired. Class 1B had a solid strategy of conserving their energy and hiding most of their quirks and Pokemon from the other students, and using the element of surprise to steal the greater points of 1A. Aizawa commented. However, they failed to consider the drive and overwhelming tenacity of 1A's more uncompromising members, like Katsuki Bakugo. Mitsuki and Masaru cheered for their son, with Inko smiling, happy for them that their son was proving his strength and skill to the world. Inko frowned, wishing that he didn't try to show it off to her son, painfully. All Might narrowed his eyes as he inspected Bakugo and his team. Well, it pains me to say it, especially knowing what kind of person he truly is. I must admit there is something admirable about you, after all. All Might thought. Not just your tenacity and battle awareness, but you understand the difference between those who aim for the top, and those who will settle. Nice going, man. Kirishima congratulated his team leader, who went to the mast with the flags. Whatever. Bakugo grunted, half-heartedly. Hey big arms. Get over here and tape these stupid flags to the mast so we won't lose them again. I told you, it's all, whatever. Sero gave up trying to correct Bakugo. He looked to the flags Bakugo strapped along the mast, their flag and 2 more. Wait, why only 3? Didn't they have 4, including their own? They were the only flags had on their ship's mast. Bakugo barked back. One of them must have been destroyed, or lost, or someone took it, while the bastard was taunting us. Either way, it doesn't matter. We wasted enough time on these extras. Bakugo leveled his gaze towards Midoriya's and Todoroki's ship. Set course for Deku's ship. We're taking that weakling's points and aiming for the top. Kirishima smirked and nodded. Aye, Captain. Kirishima saluted, steering the ship towards Midoriya's ship. As Kirishima and Sero did their tasks, Mina still gave Bakugo the stink eye for calling Midoriya a weakling again. Shaking her head, telling herself to just keep calm and that the event is almost over, Mina went over to her other teammates, hoping that this was all worth it in the end. Unbeknownst to them and Monoma's team, Bakugo's assessment of what happened to the last flag of Monoma's was right. Monoma's flag of 285 points was levitating into the hands of a meditite, sitting meditating style on Melodic's head. As she sailed back to Shinsu's ship, the two worried over their barely responsive glazed-eyed trainers. Brace yourselves, May warned as they neared the water. Putting extra fire onto the remaining few engines and jets, and Dark Shadow bracing the bot in its arms, their descent was slowed and shielded as they hit the water with a thud, slightly rocking the bracing members of Team Midoriya. And just like that, Team Midoriya have landed back into the water. Mick reported. Can they keep their prize flag with so little time left on the clock? Not if Team Todoroki has anything to say about it. Izuku looked to his right to see that present Mick was right. Todoroki's ship was coming straight towards them with a clear purpose. We just have to hold on a little longer, Izuku thought, looking to the waters for a split second. Hatsume, quick. Go port side and get us far from Todoroki. Not so fast, Midoriya. Todoroki muttered, noticing the ship shifting leftwards. Turning through the water again, Todoroki fired another wave of ice. Midoriya and his team's ship suddenly slammed to a halt at the wall of ice, locking their ship and circling around them, leaving no exit other than where Todoroki's ship was coming in. Todoroki has cornered Midoriya in a ring of ice, Mick exclaimed. He's not letting Midoriya play keep away any longer. He is skimming the water with his feet as a way to use his quirk more effectively on the water. Aizawa commented. If he were to use his ice directly on the ship, he runs the risk of trapping his own ship under the ice he makes. This way allows for him to use it without harm to his ship, and keep within the rules to act not on the water. A smart compromise. Such power and control. Tokoyami muttered, both respecting and fearing the fire and ice user. We got to get out of here, Izuku said. Tokoyami, we will break through the ice in front of us to get out here. Uraraka, May, you and the Pokemon fire on Todoroki. Aye? They all nodded in reply. Dark Shadow began clawing and smashing through the thick ice that Todoroki had created. Full cowling 8%. Izuku muttered, his green bioelectrical lightning sparking around him. Leaping from the head of the ship, Izuku drove his right leg forwards in a flying kick, Florida smash. The foot struck the ice, the force breaking and cracking a large part of the icy barrier, more being broken more by Dark Shadow. Izuku jumped back onto the bowstrip of the ship and was pleased with the progress, only for another wall of ice to quickly take the place of the former. Izuku glared towards Todoroki, glaring back from far away as he made another wall of ice. He's not going to make this easy for us, Izuku muttered. Pikachu and Magneton fired thunderbolts at Todoroki's ship. Wartortle, Water Pulse. Sparky, Thunderbolt. Yoyorozu and Kaminari ordered. Wartortle jumped up and formed an orb of water and flung it, crashing onto and cancelling Magneton's Thunderbolt with a burst of smoke. Sparky's Thunderbolt clashed with Pikachu, the two bolts of lightning evenly clashing against each other, before cancelling each other as well. Momo stared at this with confusion and suspicion. Uraraka looked towards the piles of scrap metal and broken materials that May had in front of her, and proceeded to swipe her hand on the pile, making the metal float, weightless. Why do you want me to make all this weightless? Uraraka asked the eccentric inventor, swiping her head, slightly nauseous. We can't toss it as well as Deku or Dark Shadow could. No, but who says we're tossing them? May grinned, pressing a button on the console, and the floorboards on their starboard side opened up to reveal what looked like cannons of their own. How did you get this all set up so quickly? Uraraka asked, still amazed that the inventor managed to install this, as well as the engines and air jets. Because I'm Mei Hatsume. Hatsume boasted proudly and bluntly, gathering the metals and stuffing them into the cannons, the sounds of crunching and shifting heard within. Fire in the hole. May pressed a button and with a loud bang, the cannons fired, shooting out scrap metal compressed into cannonballs. Todoroki had a second to act as he formed a shield of ice in front of his own ship to block the metal cannonballs. Most were stopped then, but some blasted through. Yoyorozu created a tungsten riot shield to block from the cannonballs, flinching at the impact. Kaminari squeaked in fear and ducked as two sailed over his head and crashed through the floorboards of their ship. Even Iida had to duck from one cannonball that neared him, breaking and chipping the back of helm. Todoroki gazed the ship a second to glance at it for damage, before returning focus on keeping the ice ring prison up, forming another wall of ice as Midoriya and Dark Shadow broke through another. Ice began to accumulate more and more on Todoroki's right side, Todoroki shivering and breathing cold air as a result. Skarmory made another dive for the flag, only to get blasted back by Honchkro's dark pulse. Todoroki, what should we do? Yoyorozu asked for orders, ducking under another cannonball. The question was received with an answer, but not from Todoroki. Everyone, I have a plan. Iida called out from the helm. It's risky and I might not have enough time, and I will be useless to you all afterwards, but if we pull this off, we can win. Well, don't keep us in suspense, Chief, what's the plan? Kaminari asked. Yoyorozu, keep up creating those shields to defend us. Iida began explaining. Todoroki, I need you to make a path to their ship, an ice bridge thick and strong enough for me to run. And Kaminari, come up and take the wheel. When I say when, spin the wheel to the right and get us out of here. The three held questionable looks, but a look at his serious expression made them nod. Alright, Chief Class Officer. Todoroki said, moving closer to the water to proceed with Iida's plan. This better work. Detroit smash. Midoriya and Dark Shadow smashed through the wall of ice again. It is done. Tokoyami said. Let us make haste to leave this confinement before Todoroki attacks again. Yeah. Izuku nodded. Nay, let's Izuku stopped mid-sentence to see Todoroki's ship had stopped going towards them. Instead, their port side was made parallel to their starboard, and looked to have no intention of moving forwards. What are they? Izuku stopped his sentence again to see Todoroki, hanging on the port side, his feet by the water. Hey, brace yourselves. Izuku warned. Something's. Before Izuku could finish his sentence, a wave of ice was unleashed from Todoroki's foot, but instead of a glacier like Izuku expected, it was instead a long and wide bridge made of ice that connected his ship to theirs. Iida slid off the ship and landed on the bridge, planting his hands and feet into a runner's start. Iida? Izuku questioned. What could Izuku's eyes widened in realization? Turning to his crew, Izuku began to yell, protect the Cipro burst. Iida yelled, and suddenly Iida took off like a rocket. Blue flames shot out of his engines before Iida launched himself forwards, so fast and forceful, his takeoff broke the ice behind him, and nearly knocked Todoroki onto the port side of the ship. Iida raced down the ice bridge, his feet cracking the bridge with the level of speed and force of his legs. He raced up enemy ship starboard, onto the deck and run right up the mast, and swiftly grabbed Midoriya's flag. With a final yell, Iida jumped off the mast and sailed into the air. To everyone, what had just occurred happened in the blink of an eye, the members of both teams barely able to register what happened to their widened eyes. Whoa, what just happened? Nick exclaimed in shock. Skarmory, Iida called out. Instantly, Iida's Skarmory flew down and grabbed his trainer by his talons, safely bringing him to his ship. Iida, wah. Kaminari, now. Iida cut Yoyorozu off with a yell. Kaminari snapped out of his shock and quickly spun the wheel. The ship beginning to turn and sail back from where it came. I don't believe it. Nick exclaimed, Izuku and his team staring in agape shock. In a single move, Class 1A's Chief Class Officer, Tenya Iida, has swiped Team Midoriya's flag in an instant. The crowd roared in cheers. Realizing they got the flag, Todoroki quickly created a final wall of ice, separating his team's ship from Midoriya's. Climbing back up to the ship, the whole team looked at Iida in amazement. Iida, what was that? Todoroki asked. Force my torque and RPM into overdrive, giving me explosive power and speed. Iida explained, looking at his engines that spewed out smoke. However, the resulting force and strain stalls my engines for a while. It's a secret move that I have been saving. Nobody in the class knew about, not even Midoriya and Yoyorozu. Iida looked back out to see Midoriya's ship, expecting for Midoriya to be shocked beyond belief. I told you, Iida said to Midoriya, though he would likely not hear him. I'd do my best to beat you, Midoriya. Awesome job, man. Kaminari cheered for his chief class officer. That was amazing. Indeed, such a well-thought move to keep this trump card a secret till we needed it the most. Yoyorozu nodded. And now that we have the flag, our victory is secured. Momo flinched at her words and looked back out to the Midoriya's ship as it sailed through the breach in the ice wall. I'm so sorry, Izuku. Momo thought, her fists clenched in a tight squeeze. Please, understand. I have to do this. I have to win this festival. For my future. Our future. Momo's eyes then widened. Wait. Something is not right. Momo thought, realizing something odd. Why aren't they? Todoroki looked back to Midoriya's ship, and his eyes widened at the same realization that Yorozu made. Hold on a moment. Mick said, he in the crowd looking at the screen events too with confusion. What's this? Despite their flag just being stolen, Midoriya's team is sailing away from Todoroki's ship. True to his words, instead of trying to catch to their ship, Midoriya's was sailing in the opposite direction. Young Midoriya. All Might muttered in confusion. Wait, really? Mirio questioned, scratching his head, while Amajiki and Nejire were likewise confused. Why? Why the hell is he running away? An enraged Murko yelled out, demanding to know the answer. Why the ever-living Arceus is he sailing in the opposite direction like an idiot? Did he blow a gasket in his brain or something? I'm not sure. Ryuki responded, looking at the screen with pondering to what Midoriya and his team were doing. They would soon get their answer when they saw Midoriya climb up to the helm with, startling to everyone, a smirk. An equally smirking maid gave Midoriya a megaphone, to which Izuku took and turned out. Nice one, Iida. Izuku's voice boomed out the megaphone. You really surprised me with that move. I'm sure that you withheld that move to use as a measure of last resort. Smart. You've made your class president proud. Which is why I'm really sorry for this. Izuku then took out a trigger of sorts and pressed on the red button. The stunned Iida saw a flashing red light and the alarm of beeping coming from below him. He looked down to see it was coming from the flag in his hands, and it was beeping like it was a bomb. Iida exclaimed, before quickly tossing it out of the ship, feeling that it was a lot heavier than he expected it to be. The flag flew out into the air and exploded in colored smoke and confetti. What the Mick exclaimed, shock. Did Midoriya just blew up his team's flag and points? No, present Mick, sir. Izuku responded to the announcer's voice. Hey, Iida, did you catch why that flag felt heavier than a normal flag? Iida's eyes widened, the rush and speed of the moment when he ran up to the flag clouding his sense through the adrenaline, but looking back on it, Iida did notice that the flag was rather heavier than expected. Recalling through his memories, he remembered how, despite the wind and altitude, Midoriya's flag never blew in the wind, only stuck on the mast, straight and still. Todoroki quickly realized this too, and looked down to see the remains of the flag, finding sparking wires, chipped metal, and faded red paint. A fake. Team Todoroki and Mick simultaneously exclaimed. That's right. They all looked back with horror at the smirking Team Midoriya, Izuku pointing behind him. They saw how Dark Shadow peeled back a peelable part of the mast to reveal the 10,320-point flag. Sorry to spoil your moment, Iida, but you quite literally stepped over your prize goal. Chow? Kaminari voiced their team's and viewing audience's question. I'm sure you are wondering how we managed to concoct this brilliant scheme of ours. Mei yelled into the mic. A little thing called misdirection. When we planned for this event, I knew that everyone would be gunning for me and my team's points. Izuku began to explain, his mind flashing back to the events that led to this point, from the stares and glares of the enemy teams. Luckily, being a super fan of heroes made me hyper-observant of everything about them, and I pick up a lot of info about them, including their quirks. Izuku remembered his time after school and before the festival, including our class's quirks. And I had them all written down and memorized. Momo, Kaminari, and Iida's eyes widened in realization. Izuku's hero journals. They all thought. With Midoriya's notes on our class's abilities, combined with his impromptu analysis on new quirks from Class 1B, our own additions, and Hatsume's support tech, we utilized support tech and Pokemon's abilities that would cancel and minimize our classmates and their Pokemon's abilities. Tokoyami continued the revelation, referring to the earbuds that cancelled Kota's quirk, Pikachu and Magneton's long-range support, the latter's defensive protect, Honchkro's haze and Dark Shadow's darkness boost. And our aerial advantage and altitude, thanks to my super cute babies, gave us the high ground in the field, and better evasion from everyone down below, including Icy's glaciers. Maid jumped in. But we knew that sooner or later, it was only going to be a matter of time before everyone's efforts to stop us would mean we would run out of escape tactics. Uraraka added. And with Bakugo and Todoroki directly gunning for us, that would be sooner. So, I made a decoy flag to put up high for everyone to see, while the real flag was still on the mast as stated, but hid under all your noses. Mei explained, remembering making the decoy flag and Uraraka painting on the letters expertly to match the original. And should we ever have been put into a strenuous situation and the decoy flag ever be taken, we would continue and flee with the 10 million points secured. Tokoyami stated. And while you fought tooth and nail to get our flag Todoroki, you were not focused on your own flag. Izuku pointed to their ship's mast. Todoroki, Momo, Iida, and Kaminari all looked up to see that instead of them taking Midoriya's flag, their own flag was suddenly gone. Only the flag they stole from Team Kendo still remained, fastened to the lower base of the mast. They looked back at Midoriya in shock, to see a shape come out of the water and land next to Midoriya, with Todoroki's 605 points in its white hands. Meet my newest Pokemon. Froakie. Their shock only began to grow. Momo then perked up in confusion, quickly creating a microphone and calling right back with, "Beat, but you can only have one Pokemon out per person, and you already have Pikachu out." Izuku's smirk grew wider. "Do I?" Izuku said, walking up to the Pikachu sitting on the helm beside him and Uraraka. "Do you know, Momo, that looks can be deceiving." Izuku's hand came up to the tail of Pikachu and stripped off the black, square tape stuck to the tip of its tail, revealing the tail to be a pure yellow, heart-shaped tail. Uraraka took the mic and said, "Meet my own new Pokemon." Uraraka introduced. "I call her Chu." "Pikachu?" Uraraka's Pikachu cried out its name in a clearly feminine voice. "Ha ha ha, no 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 no." Pikachu from inside his Pokeball taunted Todoroki's team. Todoroki and Momo's eyes widened, recalling how the Pikachu's Thunderbolt seemed to be of equal strength to Kaminari's own Pikachu, and their Pokemon's moves compared Izuku's Pikachu, whose own Thunderbolt could easily blast through their attacks. "He tricked us." Shoto Todoroki mumbled in disbelief. "Instead of just running away, he misdirected us from the real flag, and from our own being taken." "I told you, Todoroki." Izuku's voice brought Todoroki out of his state of shock. Todoroki looked up to see Midoriya, standing in front of his team, confidently. "I told you to hold nothing back for the festival." Izuku brought up his hand and gave a thumbs up. "I told you that you were stronger and better than me, but you should never underestimate those that are beneath you." Izuku brought his thumbs up down on Todoroki. "Or you will be the one who gets burned." Cheers erupted from the crowd back at the stadium, that the students could have sworn to have heard it all the way out here. "Unbelievable." Nick roared his own cheer. In a surprise twist of events, what seemed like Team Todoroki finally surpassing them, Team Midoriya revealed to have played all the teams and stole Todoroki's flag instead. The scoreboard showed Todoroki's team drop only to the 345 of Kendo's flag, and Midoriya's score to be raised even higher. The calculated strategy on Midoriya's part that held multiple stages and contingencies for when one situation came after another, and made precautions in preparation to the expected target on his team's back. Aizawa commented, denying feeling a bit of slight visible pride in his problem child. "Well done, Midoriya." Mitsuki was laughing like a maniac, talking about how Izuku has suddenly become more bouncy than even Bakugo. Masaru mumbled that that might not be a good thing. Inko just smiled with joyous pride at how confident her son has become. While she can see that he still is struggling with a deeply rooted sense of self-loathing and criticism, she can see that confident, smirking Izuku she sees is a far cry from the meek Izuku she had seen most of her life. And to see the crowd roaring in approval and cheer for her son made her all the more overjoyed for her baby boy. "Wow, that was awesome." Mirio cheered for Izuku Midoriya. "Man, even I didn't expect that switcheroo there. This Midoriya guy rocks." His smirk may be a bit taunting towards that Todoroki guy. He has this infectious aura about him that shines as brightly of positivity. Tamaki muttered. "You don't know how right you are, Tamaki." Nejire thought as she learned more and more about this Izuku Midoriya, and with every new revelation of his, her interest has grown exponentially. Nejire felt like her own aura was being attracted towards Midoriya, like a venometh to a flame. "I can't wait to meet you, Izuku Midoriya. I have so much to talk to you about." Nejire's thoughts were filled with exciting anticipation. Back with the Asui family, while the Froakie family was disappointed that the spotlight didn't shine so much on their daughter, they felt joy for the green-haired boy that had so quickly bonded with them. "Go, big bro Izu." Samador cheered and pumped his fist into the air. Lumber cheered as well, mimicking his trainer. Bam and Bear smiled and thought the same thing. "That is my future son-in-law." Bear pondered if this confident aura about Midoriya might actually infatuate their daughter more with the boy, as she was worried Tsuyu might hound Midoriya in heat. "Look, Wishiwashi." Satsuki gestured the Pokemon in the bowl to the screen. "That's the Froakie that big bro Izu also caught the same day as you." Bear and Gamma Asui then grew worried as Wishiwashi didn't seem to like looking at Froakie. The two remembered how the Froakie blinded the once rampaging Pokemon with a water pulse to the eye. The two parents prayed to Arceus that the small fry Pokemon didn't transform into his school form in the house. While Shigaraki fumed bitterly in his room, and the cloaked red-eyed figure was expressionless, the man in the throne-like chair contemplated whether to mute himself in an effort not to upset his successor, or allow him to hear his amused laughter and approving comments on Midoriya's strategy to deepen Shigaraki's hatred for the boy by adding jealousy. He decided on the later and, amusingly if not predictably, his assessment on the outcome was accurate. Night Eye stared at the screen with a frown. Foolish. Night Eye thought. His plans were flawed on how trusting they were on specific outcomes, occurring with little more than gut feeling, and predicting obvious motivations. The Night Eye's biased thoughts on ridiculing Midoriya's actions, while also groaning about how unimpressive it really was because All Might would have thought about it too, he failed to realize the hypocrisy in his own statements. Heh, I wouldn't have ever come up with something like that, All Might thought to himself as he praised his successor for his strategy and planning. Not only will he be stronger than I ever was, helped by the fact that One for All grows from person to person and his aura as an added bonus, but his analysis, strategies, and mind will make him diversify him further as an excellent leader, battle strategist, and far more reliable and competent symbol than I ever was. Meanwhile, Nezu didn't know why he had the sudden to laugh in victory, while Aizawa inwardly groaned beyond his understanding, unaware that he had just lost a bet. The people in the back of the stands felt scared and hot at the rising temperatures coming from the stoic-looking number 2 hero, Endeavor gazing at the footage of his son with an unreadable look on his face. As Midoriya's team continued to set sail away from Todoroki's ship, Mick announced out loud 2 minutes remaining. This snapped Momo out of her shocked state, trading it for panicked haste. Todoroki, we have to do something, Momo exclaimed. Yeah, I don't. The points we got from Kendo's team is going to get us in the finals, Kaminari said, looking at their now measly 345 points. We must catch up to them quickly. Iida agreed with his teammates. If not to steal Midoriya's flag, then to reclaim our points and secure our spot. Right, Todoroki. Todoroki didn't answer Iida or the others, being strangely silent. Or rather strangely silent compared to the situation. Drizzle stepped up to beside his trainer, looking up to see what was going on, but flinched as he saw his trainer's face. Todoroki's fists were clenched till they were bone white. Iida, Kaminari, Yorozu. Todoroki addressed to his uneased teammates in a terrifyingly cold voice. Get us over to Midoriya. Now. Shoto Todoroki's enraged, almost mad glare locked onto Midoriya's ship like an obsession, all the while unaware of the sparks of fire, igniting from the left side of his scarred face. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious.